Hey guys, this is Jesse at Code Assist, and this is the 8th video in my app customization series. In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure your procedures block here at the bottom of your app. To do this, I'm first going to apply a basic layout that has no procedure buttons and then build up something from scratch. In my account and settings video series, I'll cover this procedure more in depth, but for now, let me just apply it real quick. Okay, now let's jump over to the Customize page. So the Procedures section is simply a block of buttons you can add to your app layout. These are intended to capture things that you do and want to appear in your log, but don't want to manually input it through the Notes section every time. Think of high-frequency procedures, like inserting an IV or measuring your patient's glucose. There's no limit to how many you can add beyond your comfort with the resulting app layout. So let's add a few procedure buttons and see how that works. As soon as we add a new procedure, a flashing button appears in the preview. This is just to highlight which button we're working on, since the list can be a little crowded with multiple procedures. Let's skip the placeholder checkbox for now. I'll come back to that in a minute. So we see two text inputs for the procedure. Your label is what appears on the button in the app layout. But if you have a longer, more comprehensive description of the event in the log, you can optionally define a separate log description for the button. At the bottom of the panel, you'll find the familiar color swatches and sliders to change the layout and colors for this particular procedure. And in the middle, we have a few checkbox options which allow you to append additional information to the button. So for example, maybe you want to indicate whether or not inserting an IV port was successful. In that case, we could set the additional information type to yes/no prompt. A yes/no prompt is basically a box that pops up after you press the button. You can customize the title and/or message that appears in the box, and you'll have an opportunity to press yes or no. So this type works best with a yes or no question. For my example, I might set the title to successful, and I don't really need any additional message content to get the idea of what I'm asking. The next two inputs define how the log should look when I click yes or no. This is just a text string that will be added to the log entry. And the boxes below just give you a preview of how your log entry will look. So let's go ahead and save this one as is. Now my new procedure appears in the list. Now let's add another one. This time I'm going to add one for glucose. I'm fine with the label for the log description, so I won't input anything here. And for this one, I want to be able to input the glucose into a text box. So I'll set the additional info to text input prompt. Again, the dialog box that pops up after I press the button will have a title and a message, but I don't really need the message here. Additionally, I'm going to put a custom label on the text box to remind me of what I'm measuring and in the proper units. Finally, I'll choose how the result of the input box goes into my log. For this, there's a special variable described here, which allows me to include the text input value in my log entry. So here's how my log entry will look. Let's go ahead and save that. Now I'm going to quickly add one more button with no additional information. I'll label the button as PT moved, and the log will be a little more descriptive. I'm going with the defaults for everything else, so let's just save it and move on. Now I want IV next to the patient moved button, so I'm going to reorder my list real quick. And I actually want a gap between these two buttons. To do that, I'll add a new item to my list, but I'm just going to check this as a placeholder checkbox at the top. That hides all the other settings besides the target width, which allows me to increase or decrease the gap width. When I'm happy with the layout, I'll save it. And while I'm at it, let's shrink the IV button a little to make it the smaller of the two in the group. And now maybe I want the glucose button to be a different color, so let's open that up and change its colors real quick. Okay, so we have a few procedures in the list. Now let's hop back over to the app and see them in action. So if I press the Patient Moved button, not much happens, but it does appear in my log. And if I press the IV button, I get the yes/no prompt, asking me if it was successful. Again, here's the log entry that goes with it. And if I press the glucose button, I get the text input prompt. Again, here's the log entry, and notice my input variable was replaced with the text value I just input. So you can see this is a pretty powerful feature that really expands your ability to customize your app layout to be exactly as you want it. I hope you've enjoyed this video and this entire app customization series. Now that you know how to customize your app layout, check out my Accounts and Settings series to better understand how to bring your settings with you when you upgrade devices in the future.